I call Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to speak on the Civil Defence Emergency Management Amendment Bill at the third reading. And just firstly to, in this final contribution, to offer my acknowledgement and thanks to the many public servants who have been providing really valuable advice through this process that have enabled us to get the bill to this stage today. I think sometimes New Zealanders, or many people in New Zealand, think of public servants as these faceless people who are a drain on our system, who all live in Wellington and don't understand what real life is like. Well, I think the advice that we've had and this bill is an indication of the massive value that they offer to all of us, and how when governments listen to the people and respond, and public servants provide the support beside that, then actually this is what collaboration looks like. And I do I do need to say again, unusual for the Greens to be supporting legislation through under urgency. We are comfortable doing it in this situation for two main reasons. One, that the largest part of this bill is bringing forward a bill that has already been passed very recently and that went through a full select committee process. And that the second part, which is around the ensuring councils or recovery managers and controllers have the ability to require building assessments to be done within a specific time frame, and the results being given back to those controllers, that there is a need for that right now in Wellington. And we understand that, and we think this is appropriate to be done under urgency. And I would, on that note, refer back to the story that was in the paper just a few days ago of the Public Service Association acting and raising the alarm on behalf of staff of NIWA who had concerns about the safety of their building. And that it turned out that a staff member, a manager at NIWA, had signed off the building as safe without it having had an engineer's assessment. And so the union had to come behind those staff to be able to protect them from being in a building that they were confident was safe. So we do know that there could be a problem, and so there is appropriate to provide the Wellingtonians with that security. And I'm pleased to hear that the Mayor himself saying that he will be using this provision, and that is about being able to be confident about the safety of those buildings across Wellington and in other areas now. But it is also about, we know that there is going to be a series of aftershocks, and we don't know how significant they are going to be. And if we can get those assessments done now across the region, then we've got that information on record at council. So if there are further significant shocks, then we have that record of what state the buildings are in. Even if they're safe for people, but there is damage, we have that as our base that the council and the recovery team can use to be able to assess that there needs to be another assessment done. And that just helps with that recovery process and make sure that things are streamlined, which is part of the intent of the bill that we are, the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Bill that we're bringing the implementation of forward. And I will just reference a couple of points that came up through the select committee process of that original bill, which was the acknowledgement that it is important that local communities and councils are engaged in that recovery process, and that the Civil Defence Emergency Management Framework recognises that principle of acting locally, coordinating regionally, and supporting nationally. And that is what this legislation at heart is about, is us in this Parliament providing the support for that local action, and that it being collaborative and supporting agencies working together is a theme of the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Plan, and it has been really pleasing to see that in practice through the process of leading us to this legislation today. And that when we heard submissions from Christchurch on that bill, they were telling us that the key lesson from the Canterbury earthquakes and the effect on Christchurch was the value of the collaborative approach. And that this legislation is an example of that collaboration, in fact, and will enable better planning and coordination for smoother collaboration at a local level as it's implemented. And there have been quite a few acknowledgements this evening of the National Party member Stuart Smith, Labour Party member Rino Tirakatani, and I do want to just acknowledge my Green Party colleague Stefan Browning, who is also from the area and has been all over the area into the Clarence at the time when the dam was building, and checking on people and making sure that they had what they needed, and has been providing us with feedback from people in the local communities to make sure that our understanding of what is happening is grounded in those local experiences as well, because that is so crucial, that this concept of collaboration is not just doesn't just apply to government. It's about, for all of us in this process of understanding, is to be grounding our experiences of those most affected. And I would also has been raised the issue about us needing to be able to address some of those wider issues at a later date in terms of the warning system, and that is something that we also support in the Greens, and was mentioned how that applies in Porirua. I also would like to make particular mention, I lived in Japan at one stage in my life, and there was an earthquake over there at the time, and there was a tsunami warning alert that came out, and I did not speak Japanese at that stage, so the only word I could understand over the loud hailer was tsunami, tsunami, and it was absolutely terrifying. And so there is an understanding in that the deaf community is wanting a response to the civil defence that will alert them, that is not siren-based, because that relies on hearing. And we need to ensure that people who do not have English are also alerted to be able to understand these warnings as well. And that is also a lesson that we need to apply when we are talking about preparedness, as we have in the House this evening, which is something that needs to be happening across the country, but particularly across the areas that have already been affected and are shifting into recovery, because we do know that the risks of significant aftershocks are ahead of us, and we do not know what scale they will be. And for all of us to be able to have a degree of comfort, the comfort can come with preparedness. And that is about getting your plan ready, about getting your kit ready, knowing where you're going and how to get to the people that you want to be with. And so that has been pleasing to hear in the debate this evening, the common understanding around that and the support for people to be able to move forward into the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.